Receipts, guys. Fantasy football is all about receipts. If you're going to listen to some dude on YouTube about fantasy football, make sure he's got a little bit of a track record, right? You don't have to go back years, but at least if he's getting stuff right this season, right? So quickly, before I get into this video, which will be my week 2 starts and sits, I want to show you guys how we did last week. So we fucking popped off, man. So last week, we hit on 4 out of 5 of our starts. I said to start JSN, thinking there's going to be some upside, thinking it's going to be positive game script with DK Metcalf being shadowed. All the work went to Lockett. We missed on that. But we hit on Jaylen Waddle, 16.2 fantasy points. We hit on Cooper Kupp, 32.5. I'm pretty sure anyone probably could have known that Cooper Kupp would pop off. Rashee Rice was another hit, 17.3 fantasy points. And then Chris Godwin, man. Chris Godwin came through with us, 22.3 fantasy points. All of that is in full point PPR. We smashed 4 out of 5 on the starts. So when it comes to busts, this is more important, in my opinion. If you're telling people to sit dudes who usually people would be starting and they avoid having a goose egg on their fucking team or avoid having poor production on their team, I think it's worth more than getting the starts right. And we fucking popped off again on the bust. So we hit again 4 out of 5. I said to sit Amari Cooper in a tough matchup. I said to sit DK Metcalf in also a tough matchup, being shadowed by Patrick Surtain. We missed on Xavier Worthy. I'm still going to stick by the thought process. He only had 3 touches, turned 2 of them into touchdowns, scored 20.9 fantasy points. I said to sit all Titans wide receivers. Now, that's a risky sit, bro, because if you're basically making the bet that nobody on the Titans would produce, like, I'm more often going to be wrong on that. And this is in PPR. I also said to sit Keenan Allen. That one was kind of a joke. I said it's because he's fat. 8 out of 10 to start the season is not a bad start at all. You're only as good as your next fight, so let's look ahead to week 2. And again, I just want to summarize kind of how I create these start and sits. I have a little bit of a thought process. So we look at high scoring games. We look for QB situation. We look for matchups. We look for involvement and volume in general. These are all things that help me determine like who should be like a start, who should be a sit. And we're just kind of playing by the data. Like we're not trying to overthink it. It's just somebody has a bad matchup. We're going to potentially think about sitting them. If they have a positive matchup, we're going to smash them. Like this is how you get dubs, right? This is how you get wins in fantasy football. You just want to make those decisions based on data or based on like small indicators at the end of the day. So this is Ron from Fantasy Flow. If you guys get some value from this video, I would appreciate a like. I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's hop right into the video. And the first start on the list is going to be Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, I had him last week. He popped off for us. This week, they get to play the Lions. It is a 51.5 over-under, and the Lions are favored to win. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the underdog. It's a favorable matchup. They should be playing from behind. Baker Mayfield actually looked pretty good. Chris Godwin had a 90.5 PFF rating week 1, so he was the #1 wide receiver by PFF's ratings. So pretty impressive how Chris Godwin looked. He really is kind of taking that Cooper Kupp role, it seems. So that's what they were gassing him up all offseason. Looks like that is coming to fruition. The Lions can really get to the quarterback too, so they should be pressuring Baker Mayfield. I don't know if he's going to have as much time to be able to look downfield to Mike Evans. He might be looking at Chris Godwin a lot out of the slot. Now keep in mind, 3 different wide receivers played out of the slot for the Buccaneers. So McMillan, Evans, and Godwin all played out of the slot last game. Although Godwin did dominate it, he had I think like 45% of it. He's not going to like pop off for like 150 yards. 8 for 80 and a touchdown is kind of what I'm expecting again, but I think you take that every day of the week. And he honestly just like looked really good in week 1. So I think Chris Godwin is a smash start yet again. Moving on now to the next, it's going to be DJ Moore. So DJ Moore, man. So they're going to be playing against the Texans. It's a 45.5 over under, not a bad over under on the week. Like there are ones that are way worse. There's some that are in the 30s, and they're 6.5 point underdogs. I mean, what can I say, bro? Caleb Williams looked bad last game. The Bears offense looked really bad, but their defense is really solid. So this is a game that I could see becoming a shootout where, the Bears defense keeps them just in it enough, and the Bears offense turns it around just enough, man, just a little. And I think Caleb Williams has something to prove, right? So I think I can imagine this game being a little bit more competitive than we think, just because of the defense being able to keep them in it. And Alec Pierce, he just ate the Texans secondary, and DJ Moore expects to be kind of that deep threat for them. Keenan Allen's going to get a lot of the short yardage stuff. If Alec Pierce is able to eat the Texans secondary, what can DJ Moore actually do? So that's why I'm pretty excited about that. And as I mentioned, Caleb Williams just has something to prove. So I imagine this game being a little bit of a shootout with DJ Moore actually kind of dominating. So next on the list is going to be Jaylen Waddle. This one's pretty easy, bro. He was also on my starts of the week last week. Jaylen Waddle, it's a 45.5 over under at home versus the Bills, and they are underdogs at home. So the Bills want to take the deep ball away. I do think they double cover Tyreek Hill. It just makes sense. Most teams like to do that. They'll throw like a cover 2 over Tyreek Hill and double cover him with the safety. And then that really leaves a lot for Waddle. I don't think the Bills are going to be basically saying, you're not going to beat us deep on the big plays. You're going to have to beat us short and intermediate. I think that's where Waddle kind of operates. So I can imagine the Dolphins abandon the run. Mostert's injured. He's not going to be playing. It's just going to be Achane and a combination of like Jeff Wilson and Jalen Wright. So I don't know if the Miami Dolphins will really be leaning on their run. It all depends on if they can get to a big lead, and I don't know if they'll be able to against the Bills. I think the Bills get off to like a nice start, end up winning. The Dolphins just have an atrocious record against the Bills. So I don't know. I think Jaylen Waddle pops up for a touchdown. Maybe he has like, 65, 70 yards and a touchdown this week. So for me, that's a great start. Now I got a couple of deep starts for you guys. So this isn't very typical, but I do have some deep wide receiver starts. First one sounds a little gross, but it's Jaylen Waddle. Wan'Dale Robinson. So a 43.5 over under. The Giants will be playing at Washington, and the Giants are 1.5 underdogs. So this one doesn't look too attractive. It's only a 43.5 over under. That's not too great, but I want to show you this little tweet that I saw from Jacob Gibbs, who's probably goated in the fantasy industry. He's got some of the best data out there. So since the start of the 2023 season, no cornerback has allowed more receiving yards than Washington's Benjamin St-Juste. In week 1, the Commanders allowed 139 receiving yards to the slot. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan all caught their touchdowns on a slot route. Keep that in mind. So last week, Baker Mayfield threw 3 touchdowns, 1 to each of those guys. All of them were operating out of the slot on those touchdown passes. So to me, that's exciting. That's a little piece of data that shows us that whoever operates out of the slot versus Washington Commanders should see some success. It seems like that's where the weakness is for the Washington Commanders, and that is where Wan'Dale Robinson will be playing out of. A lot of analysts are really like saying that Malik Neighbors is a smash play this week, but I think Malik Neighbors is mostly going to be playing on the outside. That's what he did in week 1, right? So he only played 17% of his snaps from the slot. I know this graphic's kind of blurry, kind of shit, but yeah, it's 78% was Wan'Dale Robinson out of the slot over here. So just to let you guys know, Chris Godwin went 8 for 83 and a touchdown, as I mentioned. I doubt that Malik Neighbors is going to suddenly shift to playing slot. They might put him in there a few times in the game just to kind of like scheme him open. He was getting double covered quite a lot last week. So yeah, that is my first deep smash start, or deep start. I wouldn't call it a smash. Next one is going to be Michael Wilson. Sounds a little bit gross, but 48.5 over under at home versus the Rams. I think this game's going to be a shootout. Both teams don't have the best defenses. It is a divisional game. They're going to be very competitive. It's a game that both teams like desperately want to win. Just every divisional game means so much. The Rams slot corners are pretty strong. So I think whoever plays out of the slot for the Cardinals, which is probably Greg Dortch, is going to be pretty locked up and clamped up, meaning they're going to have to get some production on the outside, which is going to be Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson. Now, obviously, I could have made Marvin Harrison a start of the week here, but because this is the deep start section, I do think Michael Wilson pops up for a touchdown. I think it's the only way that they can get beat, to be honest. Like, for example, the Rams did play the Lions last game, and Amon-Ra St. Brown really didn't do much. A lot of people are saying that's because Jameson Williams popped off. It's because the run game was humming. Sure, but Amon-Ra St. Brown should still be getting his, right? It must mean that the Rams are doing something right. I think they were locking him down because, as I mentioned, their slot corners are pretty good. So I don't know, man. I mean, Jameson Williams 8 because the Rams have a strong, have strong slot corners, or maybe they just didn't game plan around Amon-Ra. It seems unlikely that Amon-Ra will just get taken out of the game plan. I think it was just like, well, we're going to take what the defense gives us, and I think Michael Wilson can probably operate in the same type of way that Jameson Williams did. So that's a deep one. I understand if it sounds gross, but let's now move on to the sits. First sit is going to be DK Metcalf. So this one's kind of straightforward. It's only a 38.5 over under on the road versus the Patriots. He should be getting the Christian Gonzalez treatment. Now, Christian Gonzalez, a little bit of an unknown name, but he is the superstar corner for the Patriots. Probably one of the lone bright spots of the Patriots defense. Check out this statistic. So these are Christian Gonzalez's NFL matchups going back to last season. So he just played against Jamar Chase. 20 routes. Jamar Chase only had 3 receptions for 15 yards. So most of Jamar Chase's output last week was not against Christian Gonzalez. Basically, he was getting clamped up anytime Gonzalez was on him. 23 routes from Garrett Wilson, only 3 for 18. Tyreek Hill, 0 for 0 and an interception. Waddle, 1 for 15. Devontae Smith, 2 for 22. Antonio Brown, 4 for 47. So they just, if a team sees Christian Gonzalez, they just move that wide receiver to the slot and get him off so that Christian Gonzalez cannot follow, because he typically just plays on the outside. Basically, he's a clamp up corner. He's going to be playing against DK Metcalf in a low over under. I think this is going to be another Kenneth Walker game. Now, in week 1, the Patriots did well against the pass, right? They really defended the pass well on top of it. So Zach Moss went 9 for 44 and a touchdown. Even in a negative game script, which is kind of, maybe that's why he went 9 for 44, because the defense was playing much further back. Not, trying not to allow the Bengals to hurt them deep. Basically, caveat, if Kenneth Walker plays, I would sit Metcalf. If Kenneth Walker is not playing, it's Charbonnet getting the entire backfield, I'd still start Metcalf then, because they're going to need production from somewhere. I don't know if they trust Charbonnet as much as they trust Kenneth Walker. So DK Metcalf, he's a sit. Last week he was a sit. It worked. I think I'd sit him again. This is 2 brutal cornerback matchups for him. But there is a chance that he doesn't get shadowed. Next person on the list is George Pickens. Pretty similar thesis. 36.5 over under on the road versus the Broncos. It's the lowest over under on the slate. I know George Pickens was very involved, and he did produce actually pretty well with AJ Terrell on him, who's also one of the better cornerbacks in the league. But Surtain's a different. I think Surtain is the #1 corner right now. And I don't know if Pickens is going to have just as much success. He seemed pretty confident. There was a interview where Pickens said, "Yo, I played him in college. I busted that ass. I'll bust that ass again." I probably added that end part, but yeah, Surtain just held Metcalf to 3 for 29. So if you think George Pickens is tremendously better than Metcalf and that he will produce against Surtain, go for it and start him. I have my reservations. Next person on the list, last guy on the list, is Courtland Sutton. I had Courtland Sutton as a trade for candidate, but I think you might want to wait 1 week. So 36.5 over under. It's the lowest on the week, as I mentioned. It's both of these teams playing against each other. Joey Porter Jr. is on the other side of the ball, and he just ate Drake London for breakfast. Absolutely clamped him. You can blame it on Kirk Cousins, blame it on the play calling, whatever you want to blame it on. At the end of the day, Drake London did not do anything, and Joey Porter is a standout corner. So I think Courtland Sutton's in for another tough week. Now, here's the problem. Courtland Sutton might get a touchdown. He could get a touchdown, even with Joey Porter on him. And if he does, he's going to be a little bit more expensive than he is this week. So either you wait a week for him to get clamped and then try to trade for him, because I think his schedule really opens up, or you try to trade for him now and sit him either way. Either way, I would try to sit Courtland Sutton. If somebody told you to put money on it, whether he's going to score a touchdown or not, I would have to say he wouldn't. Obviously, he still can. Those are the starts and sits, boys. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a sub. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.